Hi everybody, this is Kefren, your favorite French Canadian. Today I'm going to show you how to boost your FPS in the new Warzone map. Pretty good map, the visibility is really good also. Right now, inside of the game, it's missing a couple of features from Nvidia. That helps a lot normally with FPS, I will show you later. But we're going to start with Windows, make sure that you have proper setting for this game. So search for your game mode. If you have like the latest version of Windows 10, go with game mode at on. After the 1909 update, now game mode is viable. So it's good for your FPS, and also it makes sure that all your resources are dedicated to the game. Xbox Game Bar, I still recommend to deactivate this, causing stuttering, artifact crashes, a lot of different stuff. So don't use that. The capture, also make sure that background recording is at off and recorded audio is at off. Another thing is, if you have an Nvidia card, series 1000 or more recent, make sure that your hardware accelerated GPU scheduling is set at on. So to have that, just search for the graphics setting in your search bar and you need to activate it. It helps with bottleneck, and you can expect an improvement of 2 to 5% boost in your FPS if you have a card like the 1050 Ti, 1060, or the 2060. If you have something more recent or more powerful, you will not see any difference. I also recommend to update your driver. So AMD driver, Nvidia driver, Warzone is a pretty popular game. So you're gonna make sure that you have the latest optimization from those company. Also make sure that if you have an integrated GPU, go on the Intel website, download the latest driver from Intel. Don't just update it from your Windows update. It's just a generic driver. So you want like gaming driver, so go on their website. Another thing that I recommend is right energy. Go to your power option. Make sure you're running balance or high performance. Normally, if you're running on a desktop computer, you will not have this issue. It will be balanced by default. But sometimes on some laptops, when it's not plugged in the wall, you will be at power saver. That's good. You don't want to, it's because of your battery. You want to have more durability. So for an example, your computer maybe can like stay 40% sorry, longer when you use the power saver. But sometimes when you plug it back to the wall, it doesn't go back to balance and high performance, and you want to make sure that you're running at the maximum performance of your computer. So always use balance or high performance. So this is pretty much it. One more thing, on my YouTube channel, I have dedicated guides on how to overclock GPU and CPU. So it can help like 2 to 15% depending on your component, thermals, and other stuff. A lot of different like variable, but still it can help a lot for a game like Warzone. So now let's go inside of the game. So now in the graphics setting, let's go to option. The first one, we want to go to graphic and display. Make sure that the display mode is at full screen. Don't use window, borderless, or extended. I was getting some weird stuttering in borderless, so super important to play full screen. Make sure that you're using the proper monitor, but anyway, you will see it in your monitor if you have your image or not. This one, display adapter, is kind of important if you're playing on a laptop and you have an integrated GPU and a dedicated GPU. Make sure that you're seeing your GPU over here. If you have, for example, a 1060 mobile and you have an Intel CPU with a GPU and you see integrate Intel video card here, it's not normal. You should see Nvidia 1060. So super important to look at this. For the screen refresh rate, make sure that you have the refresh rate of your monitor. So by default, when I installed the game, it was at 60 and my monitor is 170. So super important to look at this and make sure that you're changing it. For the render resolution, I recommend 100. This is pretty much last resort. If after the old guide you're still struggling with your FPS, you can go with something like 90. Don't go lower than that. Everything will look blurry. It's a mess. So you want to see enemies. So don't go too crazy with this one. After that, you don't want to use the dynamic resolution. So this one put disable. So you don't want to use the frame rate here. Aspect ratio should be automatic, or whatever that you want to use. If you have to stretch your screen, you can do it if you want. For the VSync, I don't use any VSync. I disable this option. I'm using the FreeSync option that I have on my monitor. So if you have FreeSync or G-Sync, don't just disable your VSync. If you don't have those technology, it's question of preference. If you want less input lag, don't use VSync. If you don't really care and you don't like those tearing, as you can see here, just enable your VSync. For the custom frame rate, I'm locking my FPS at 168. I want to lock my FPS to make sure that I'm using the FreeSync range. So I need to have less than 170 FPS. And also, I recommend to sometimes lock your FPS. If you're playing on the laptop and you have like a 60 Hz screen, don't go too crazy with your FPS, even if you have like 90 or 100. Sometimes your thermal will go very high, and after that you will have some throttling with your CPU and GPU, and now you will start lagging and you will not knowing like why. This is pretty much because of it. So lock your FPS if you have some issue with your thermals. For the brightness, I'm playing right now at 50. Maybe I'm gonna test 55, but honestly, the map is very clear. I really like it. So for now, I'm just playing at 50. For the quality, the first one is the field of view. I'm playing at 105. I know a lot of people saying field of view doesn't affect your FPS. It affects your FPS in a lot. So if you're playing, for an example, at 100, you see what you need to render. So it's a lot more if you compare with 60. So if you're playing on a low-end computer, I don't recommend to go crazy with your FOV. Start at 80 and look at your FPS. If you can do a little bit more, go higher, but it's very important to not go too crazy. I did a test on my Dell XPS when at 1050, and honestly, I can't really go higher than 90. I am losing too much FPS. So this is pretty much it. Camera movement, I recommend 50% to have more visibility. So just put least. After that, streaming quality, it really depends on your VRAM. So if you have more than 4 GB of VRAM, go with normal. Less than 4 GB, go with low. And it's pretty much the same thing with texture quality and texture filter anisotropic. Look at your VRAM usage here. You have an indication. So this is Warzone. I'm using 4.7 GB right now on 16. Just make sure that you have 10% like empty. Super important. Don't go like at 100%. You will have for sure stuttering, so make sure that you have like some 10% empty that will use for other stuff if you're watching, like, I don't know, at Twitch with just your windows and stuff like that. So this is pretty much it. Particle quality, this one I recommend to go with low if you're struggling with some random drop when you're fighting, you see explosion, doors are breaking. It's probably because of your particle quality, so go with low for this one. Bullet impact, I like to go enable with this because I want to know where I shoot, and you're not losing a lot of FPS. It's like 1%, so it's not a huge thing here. Go with enable. So for the tessellation, I recommend near. It will not affect your FPS, except if you have like a very old GPU. You're running an old AMD GPU, I don't know, like a 5000 series, like back in the days, not the last gen. But yeah, it can affect a little bit because AMD had like some struggle with tessellation back in the days, like 6 or 7 years ago. So depending on that, like if you have something new, like a 4 years ago video card, you will not have any issue with near. Dismember and gore effect, I recommend to disable a little bit more FPS. Not necessarily like on the flight, but when something happens, it's a bit like effect if you're getting some random drop, because it takes some also a physics in this parameter. So that's why I'm recommend to go with a disable. For on-demand texture streaming, if you have 4 GB again and more, pretty good like computer, go with high quality, or go with standard if you are struggling. For disable, I'm not too sure about it. If you have like a very bad internet connection, like I can't really test it. I know on my laptop, my entry level, I'm going with standard, but like I have a pretty good internet and I didn't see any issue. But maybe if you have issue because you need to download when you play the game, maybe disable can a little bit better. But I feel like anyway, just do some testing. Maybe it can help you. After that, post-processing effect. Those one, they're saying if you're not using the anti-aliasing here, the SM2X or the Filmic SMAA, put this one at 1. I didn't see any difference. I don't have any noise in my image, so that's why I'm going with 0. Film grain, you don't want to use it, again, for visibility, so go. So for the anti-aliasing, I don't use any anti-aliasing in this game. I feel like when I add anti-aliasing, everything looks a little bit blurry. So if you want visibility, I really recommend to use off. If you don't like aliasing, like as you can see in the image here, for sure you can use something like Filmic or the SMAA. So it's really a question of preference, but for me, for visibility and FPS also, it will help you a lot to go with off. It's a question of preference. After that, depth of field, world motion blur, and weapon motion blur, I recommend to disable all those three options. Will not necessarily give you more FPS, like maybe 1 to 2%. I saw a little bit of difference, but it's more about visibility again. Everything will be crystal clear. And now the shadow and the lighting, the last parameter. So first of all, shadow map resolution. If you compare extra to low, you can expect a nice 10 to 12% boost in your FPS. So this one is really important. I also recommend to use cache spot shadow and cache sun shadow because you want to cache your shadow. It will help you a little bit with your FPS. Particle lighting, this one, if I compare ultra to low, you can expect another 8 to 10% in your FPS. So huge deal over here. And I recommend to disable for sure the ray tracing. You will lose like 40% of your FPS, so it's pretty crazy. Ambient occlusion also, it's a big thing. If you use both versus disable, you can expect another 8 to 10% boost in your FPS. Your game will look flat, but for visibility, it's really good to just disable your ambient occlusion. And the last one, the screen space reflection. At disable, you can expect a nice 3 to 4% boost in your FPS. So this is pretty much it for your graphic parameter, guys. That it's a bit weird. I don't see any anymore like the boost, the low input lag from not the low input lag, but the boost feature from Nvidia, and I don't see any DLSS. I feel like they removed a couple of graphic parameter, so probably they're gonna update it later. Probably it's because of the new map. So this is pretty much it. If you have any question, guys, just comment in the YouTube section, post me your rig, CPU, GPU, and RAM. I will try to help you the best that I can. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Peace.